The big, beautiful bill has passed, and after this big victory for the Trump administration, for some reason the liberal media over here decided to try to corner Byron Donalds. That was a mistake. But CNN, they know what they're doing. They're the big dogs, so they decided to get this unknown guy from Alaska, House Republican, to try to corner him on the bill. But wait, that didn't work either. It's SeanDaniel here, filming from Kentucky, USA, right before the 4th of July. If any of you are in Kentucky, feel free to let me know. Now get ready for some impressive details shared by both of these guys about the bill that will probably give you more conviction in believing in why this bill helps put America in a better direction. I know that's what it did for me watching and making this video.
Congressman Donalds, thank you for your time here. How are you going to message this back home, especially some of the sticky pieces of this, like those Medicaid cuts?
A couple of things. Number one, small business taxes are not going to go up on the American people. Working families, middle-class families are getting some serious tax relief to help them with the issues like affordability, keeping more money in their pocket. We are finally delivering on the mandate that the American people gave us last November, securing the southern border once and for all, building out the wall, giving the president and his team the resources they need for deportations. We're providing money for defense. We are actually going to open up our country when it comes to energy exploration, stuff we drastically need. Talk to any business owner. They will tell you we need more baseload power on the grid. This bill takes us in that direction. The list goes on. And then strengthening work requirements in Medicaid and in SNAP is a good thing. These are basically Clinton-era work requirements. That is a positive thing. And if it helps people be able to move into the workforce to make their lives better, while at the same time also reducing the amount of money that we're spending in Washington, D.C., all the better.
I know your state didn't vote to expand Medicaid, but 41 states did. So what do you make of the concerns from your vulnerable Republican colleagues, including Brian Fitzpatrick, who voted against this bill because of the cuts to Medicaid?
Well, look, I will tell you this, that at the end of the day, let's be realistic. When Barack Obama and that administration expanded Medicaid for able-bodied adults, that was the wrong recipe. What we are doing in Medicaid right now is we are saying to poor families, poor kids, elderly, pregnant women, that they are not as important as able-bodied adults with no children who have an ability to be in the workforce. So I will tell you that what we are doing is, in my view, beginning that process of making sure we are focused on people who are in need and who are vulnerable. And if you're able-bodied, then we want to make sure that you're incentivized to get into the workforce, pay for those benefits for yourself. Everybody has things that they want, but we have to begin to prioritize as a nation. This bill begins that process.
So, Congressman, understood. I was in Missouri. I spoke to actually a patient who voted for President Trump, a Republican voter who was not qualified for Medicaid until Missouri voted to expand it because of how low the wages there are for teachers, for nurses, for police officers. What do you say to those people? Are you worried that you cost them their vote?
No, actually, I'm not worried, because what we're also doing in this bill on the other side is we are expanding our economy. We are going to get far more investment into the United States. So whether it's Florida, Missouri, Utah, Texas, wherever you're talking about, California, people will be able to have a stronger economy, a more durable economy, so wages actually will go up. Remember what happened in Trump's first administration. Wages actually rose for working families. They were making $6,000 more adjusted for inflation. That is real value in the lives of people. So our philosophy is growing the economy, getting more people into the workforce. That actually helps to take down the burdens on the federal government. And the long run issue we have is we cannot borrow money at this velocity. We can't keep this going forever. We are going to have to slow down our borrowings. That is an empirical fact. If we don't do that, the bond rates for the U.S. government will go up, and that will mean everybody's borrowing rates. Families looking for a house, looking for a car, credit cards, small businesses looking for access to capital, their borrowing rates are going to go up if ours continue to go up.
Well, this bill, as you know, didn't cut enough from the deficit as you wanted and adds a few $1 trillion to the deficit. But I want to ask you real quickly here, do you think Republicans will keep the House in 2026 after this vote?
I do. A couple of things. Number one, in my view, and it differs from some of my colleagues, tax policy does not add to the deficit. Tax policy is about raising revenue. And so what we believe is going to happen is that we're going to raise more revenue from this bill. That's going to expand our economy, and that means we're going to be able to not just keep the House, but also keep the Senate and continue to do constructive things for the American people.
Thank you, Congressman. We're going to listen into the press conference.
See, Byron Donalds is really prepared. I've made a lot of videos on him. He is a young guy who knows how to handle the media. Do you see also how they find one story? They go out to try to speak to one person in Missouri who's possibly going to be affected by this, who voted for Trump, and put it on the news like it's the tell-all story. They won't preach anything positive about the fact that the change in Medicaid requirements that Obama instilled were wrong. And it was just about putting more people on the government's payroll where we got to pay for them. And that we're rolling back to basically Clinton-era Medicaid requirements, regulations. They'll never say it. He handled it well, and I know he's also excited to finally get to go on vacation and not stay there voting on this bill. So that was MSNBC. Now let's get to the big dog, CNN, and see how Alaska Representative Nick Begich handles the Karen from CNN.
And joining us now to discuss the bill is Alaska's at-large Republican Congressman Nick Begich. He voted for the president's legislation. Congressman, congratulations on the passage of this legislation. I know that we just heard Speaker Johnson sort of celebrating what seemed like the potential impossible to do by this point, and it has happened. What is going through your mind now that this legislation has finally passed and headed to President Trump's desk after several overnight sessions and lots of negotiations in Congress?
You know, it was a long road to get here. There are a lot of different perspectives in the conference, but I am absolutely thrilled to see this bill pass. You know, there are so many important priorities for our nation here, many that you've talked about already. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, reduced tax pressure for America's seniors, securing our border. The list goes on and on. In my home state, we're unlocking 30 million acres of mandated oil and gas lease sales for the benefit of the people of Alaska, but really for the entire nation. We want to make sure that we keep inflation pressures down. Well, the best way to do that is to lower energy costs, and we have the energy that we need to do that. Domestically, Alaska represents nearly half of all the estimated undiscovered oil and gas potential in the entire nation. We're unlocking that for the benefit of the people. I'm thrilled to see this bill pass, and I'm looking forward to see the president sign this bill tomorrow on the 4th of July.
As you know, Congressman, one of the senators for Alaska, Republican Lisa Murkowski, was a holdout on the president's legislation, but she ultimately decided to back this bill only after securing several carve-outs that would lessen the blow of cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. Those food stamps is what SNAP is for Alaskans. She told us that she struggled mightily with those components. How is it fair that Alaskans got those carve-outs, but Americans in other states do not?
You know, I think Alaska is a really unique state. When you think about Alaska, just imagine this. We're 2.5 times the size of Texas, but have the population of a Dallas suburb. We're very spread out. 82% of Alaskans, or rather Alaskan communities, are not on a road system. When we talk about rural health care in America, Alaska is the most rural state we have. And so folks can only travel in those communities by boat, if available, or by plane. And so, I understand her desire to make some corrections from her perspective for SNAP and Medicaid. That's what she needed to do in order to get to a yes on this bill. And she did ultimately vote yes, and we were able to move this through today on the House side with near unanimous support among the Republican conference.
But she had a lot of concern, and even after voting yes, saying that her concern is like what it could do to other vulnerable Americans in other states. You know, what do you say to that? Would you have voted for this bill if Murkowski had not secured those carve-outs?
I voted for this bill when it left the House, and I was happy with what we had. I think what's important to recognize when you talk about Medicaid, where there are so many exceptions for the work requirement, which has gotten the most attention. You know, the traditional Medicaid population are untouched in this bill. They continue to be protected under this bill. Caregivers excluded. Alaska Natives and American Indians excluded. People who are in counties or boroughs with more than 1.5 times the nation's unemployment rate are excluded, and people who are looking for work or people who want to volunteer for just 20 hours a week, they're all excluded. And so this has really been designed to isolate the very small population of folks who are leveraging the system, able to work, but are choosing actively not to. And those folks, to them I say, look, be a part of the solution. Be a part of the solution. Get a job, look for a job, volunteer. but do something to contribute like the rest of America is contributing to ensure that these programs remain strong and available for the people who truly need them.
And critics argue, though, that it's beyond that. It's beyond, the waste in the program. There's not going to be as much funding for rural hospitals, even with the additional funding in this bill. You're hearing from hospitals concerned that they're going to have to shut down because of this, that the red tape, the more paperwork people are going to have to fill out, that they're going to slip through the cracks of the Medicaid system. There are those concerns. And they argue that this is taking from the poor, squeezing the most vulnerable to give to the rich. I mean, there was a analysis done on this version of the big, beautiful bill that the House just passed that found that the top 0.1% of earners in the United States, the average annual income gain would amount to more than $290,000. When you consider that, how can you argue that this legislation really benefits working class Americans rather than the wealthiest of the wealthy? $290,000 for the wealthiest.
Well, I think that there are a lot of numbers that have been flying around from different groups, including the CBO and others. I think the important thing to understand about this bill is that it increases the take-home pay for the average family in America by $10,000. $10,000. And that may not seem like a lot to a lot of folks out there, but it's a lot to America's working families to have that money available to take care of their kids, to make the mortgage payment, to make the car payment. Those things matter
but
to everyday
do you believe
Americans.
that the 0.1% of earners should get up $290,000 in tax benefits here? Are you comfortable with that?
Look, the tax bracket for folks in that bracket did not change. And the taxes from 2017 for every American did not change, right? If we didn't pass this bill, the average American would see a 68% tax increase.
I'm not sure if that's
to
actually
preserve the
accurate.
economy.
And my producer can tell me in my ear. I don't think it's 68% increase. It's a continuation, you're right, of the 2017 Trump tax cuts for the most part. And of course there was the addition of no tax on overtime tips, but I don't think that's right. And I just want to be clear, the number that I mentioned was from the Penn-Wharton budget model that uncovered that statistic. It's a nonpartisan entity that conducts these analysis. I just want to be transparent with our viewers of where that's coming from. Congressman Nick Begich, thank you so much for your time. And
I love when we get extra details from these quality guys who go and do interviews with the liberal media that prove how the Republicans are really saying what they mean by, if you are able to go to work and you don't want to go to work, you're not going to be covered by Medicaid. But even if you contribute to society, he said, by even volunteering for 20 hours a week, but your income is still very low, you can qualify for Medicaid. I didn't expect that. I thought it would mean you'd have to be working so much, still have such a low income, you could qualify. But they really are trying to incentivize people to get involved in the workplace, in the country, and not just sit at home and to take advantage of these benefits that so many people have been just abusing, really. And can you imagine how many of these super green Democrats like AOC are pissed that they got a provision in there to allow them to drill, sell, and take advantage of more of Alaska's rich natural minerals, whether it's oil, other things. They must be screaming, and I bet they fought that tooth and nail. But that's a big victory for the U.S. to generate more income, generate more flow into our economy, which is what Trump and the Republicans keep saying this bill is going to do. They're not going to be giving out so much free money to all these people, but we're going to grow the economy a different way. And that's one real example of that claim. It's SeanDaniel here, and if you want to see how some of those green Democrats are melting down like AOC after the big beautiful bill was passed, check out this video right here, and I will see you in the next one.